From Los Angeles, the home of film and television, this is Film Music Live, a webcast featuring outstanding composers, orchestrators, filmmakers, and more from the world of music for film, television, and video games, talking about their work and answering your questions. Film Music Live is sponsored by the Film Music Network and Film Music Institute. And now the host of Film Music Live, Daniel Schweiger.
Hey everyone, I'm Daniel Schweiger, and welcome to Film Music Live, the show where you get to ask the questions to today's top composers. I'm happy to have you here. Taylor Sheridan had already put his screenwriting stamp on the cinematic Southwestern Badlands with screenplays for Sicario and Hell or High Water before his filmmaking debut with Wind River, which helped enable him to put his claim on a whole new TV universe with Yellowstone in 2018. A significantly raw and more mythic update of the classic TV soap Dallas, Sheridan's tale of families warring within and without for their slice of God's country was a smash that transported millions into a new, beyond eventful West that begat the origin stories of 1883 and 1923, and now the Yellowstone spin-offs Marshals and Dutton Ranch, along with Sheridan's more female-centric home in the wilds of the Madison. A musical wingman who's now on the reins of the Sheridan verse is English-Australian composer BRETON VIVIAN. A citizen of the world while developing his music, Vivian fortuitously worked with composer Brian Tyler on such projects as The Mummy, The Fate of the Furious, and Crazy Rich Asians before proving his romantic worth on scores for 5 Feet Apart and Redeeming Love. It wasn't long before Vivian was writing with Tyler as a co-composer on Yellowstone, 1883 and 1923, before joining him for Sheridan's high drama with John Dutton's Offspring, whether they're bringing in outlaws with Marshals or seeking their own cattle fortune on Dutton Ranch, all while Michelle Pfeiffer stakes her romantic claim on the nature-adjacent Madison. BRETON VIVIAN has mastered a richly orchestral, soulful, suspenseful, and epic Western symphonic approach that immediately lets you know that you're on the range of Tyler Sheridan's property, a place that even city slickers flock to. The old Western composers are indeed riding in the saddle with Vivian, giving the composer a spotlight like never before in a genre he's truly lassoed, one whose offspring and musical possibilities promise to keep growing alongside Taylor Sheridan's TV range. And now let's welcome a major composer of the Taylor Sheridan multiverse, BRETON VIVIAN.
Hey, how's it going?
Oh, it's great to have you here.
Thanks
Well, you really are a citizen of the world. How did you end up in film music and TV music in Hollywood?
I was in I played in bands. I was a guitarist, and for a long time I thought that was going to be my vocation, playing in hardcore punk bands and metal bands around England. And always in the background, I loved classical music, I loved film, and eventually that just took over, and I decided that if I wanted to do it, I needed to get proper feedback on my music critique and to learn the craft a bit more. So that took me into USC, to their SMPTV program, and also brought me to Los Angeles, and that was about 12 years ago, and since then haven't looked back.
So you started off as a major wingman to Brian Tyler. How did you guys hook it up?
I replied to a job ad that he had out there for an assistant composer position, and went to the interview. We seemed to hit it off, and from there I was his assistant, and I worked with him for about 2 years in that role. And then I sort of said to him, look, man, I want to write, I want to work on a TV show with you. And he said, oh, I think I've got the project for you. And it ended up being Yellowstone. So I was very fortunate to have it be that project.
I mean, there are a lot of people who work, with like a very busy composer, like Brian, and a lot of people work and they don't quite hit the heights that you have. What do you think, or what's your advice, I guess, to anybody who's like working with a major composer to get to where you are?
I think I think you just got to be there to help out, and like try not get in the way and just try and be open-minded to because at the end of the day it gets so busy, and you could be doing tech. Well, in my role, I could be doing solving tech problems, I could be writing, I could be orchestrating. It ends up being just all hands on deck when there's so much music to write in such a short space of time. So I think for me, what I would want is just someone who's willing to get stuck in and has a good attitude about it. I think like having a good attitude in this industry takes you very far.
So, were you a fan of westerns at all before Yellowstone came your way? And what was your reaction to seeing the first season of Yellowstone, or just the first couple of episodes?
Yeah, I definitely, I was a fan, and honestly, for a while I'd been saying, "Oh, when are westerns going to make a big comeback?" Because there was so many films that came out throughout the years, and they would have kind of cycles as well, and then it just sort of disappeared for a long time. And I remember before that I was saying, "Oh man, Hollywood should be doing more westerns. Like we haven't seen that in a long time." And then, sure enough, Taylor came along. So I forgot the second half of your question.
Oh, I mean, just basically, what was your reaction when I guess the pilot for Yellowstone would have landed on your and Brian's doorsteps?
Yeah, I was just amazed. My actual first thing of Taylor's that I saw was Wind River, his film, and I was just utterly blown away by that. That was, I feel like, for me, the first taste of his neo-Western style. And of course he also wrote Hell or High Water as well, and to have those projects as a TV series, a long form storytelling, was just felt like a dream come true, really.
What was your, Taylor is obviously a multi-hyphenate. He's an actor, a writer, director. I mean, everything you can imagine. What was your impression of, I imagine you all would have met together, had a video conference as to what kind of music he was looking for Yellowstone. What was your impression of Taylor and his musical tastes?
He listens to a lot of music, a lot of classical, and for me, he's one of those creators that is, I think is just really sought after because in Hollywood, because he just lets you get on with an idea that you want to have with the show, and he wants to hear it, and he will give feedback where it doesn't feel excessive or extraneous. It's when he gives his feedback, sometimes, well, a lot of the times I'm like, yeah, that's such a great idea, or it's always progressing the music and making it better. And it's this perfect balance between letting you get on with it and doing what you want to do and what you are good at, and then also him just helping to facilitate making it a better piece of art, really.
Did Taylor know what music he wanted Yellowstone to have?
Yes, so he didn't want the classic Western sound. He was really he really wanted us to stay away from that kind of banjos or anything that was like considered very traditional of that area of music, and also anything that was considered the things like Ennio Morricone or all those sort of spaghetti Western kind of sounds.
Yeah, I mean, I was just immediately struck, when I got hooked like that on Yellowstone, just how kind of lush and really symphonic that music was. I mean, this is like big screen music. It's not like, and it just made the show feel that much bigger. I mean, basically, was it just like anything you want? Here's like the 100-piece orchestra, just go for it.
Well, the one thing that Brian said he wanted was he really wanted Eastern European sounds in the score. His idea was that this would be the music that a lot of immigrants that come over to America bring with them, and building the score based off of that kind of sound. And I guess we sort of naturally gravitated towards a very symphonic kind of writing and thematic writing, just because I think the story, it felt like the story really required it. Firstly, on the one hand, it's like you have these incredibly beautiful scenic shots of rural Montana, and that paired with just this big lush string kind of texture felt really right, and felt like it did a lot of justice for those scenes and those imagery. But then also on the other hand, it was the kind of multi-layered of different characters and different storylines kind of battling each other, and how do you explore that in a way that feels cohesive. And we felt maybe a thematic kind of approach might help each character have its own kind of place within the score, really.
Tell me, I mean, I think really the kind of alpha and omega of like the sound of all these shows really comes from the Yellowstone theme. What was it? How was it to develop that theme that really just fed so much of what would come later?
I think so. Brian was the one who really worked on that, and so I think it was something that. So Brian wrote that piece of music, and then I wrote kind of a suite of ideas, and we sort of combined them together to send to Taylor. And what it did was really just point us. It really showed that we were heading in the correct direction with the sound, and it allowed us to go to the races with it, really, and expand the idea and really kind of flesh it out in a way that was in a way that we felt we were both on the same page with Taylor, and comfortable exploring where we can go with that music, that style.
Right. I mean, what was I think 1883 was the first spinoff of the universe. And I think Yellowstone was still on at the same time. 1883, the prequel, as it were, came on. What was your reaction? And how did he want the music of 1883 to be different from Yellowstone?
So it was interesting because Yellowstone, my first experience with that was watching season 1, episode 1. And with 1883, my experience was reading the scripts. And so on that regard, it was a really unique experience to be able to write a whole suite of music that is based on the script and not actually having seen any cuts. And it allowed us to be really quite varied with the music, and not get pigeonhole in any direction with it. And that one was one of those situations where Taylor sort of was open to hearing what the ideas that we had, and it was to take that music, that idea of the immigrants coming in, but just doing it like going back a century sort of thing, and having kind of instruments that like really old, archaic sounding, like a hurdy-gurdy, or like an old violin. And I sort of had this imagery in my mind of, imagine there's an instrument that you brought, like a family heirloom that you brought over with you, and it's a small kind of instrument, because you can't bring it on a caravan if it's too big. And so maybe it's battered, it's kind of a bit pitchy, it's kind of going out of tune. And the idea was that you sort of build the score out of those kinds of instruments that help give it that personality and kind of tell the story as well.
Now, that brings us to our first question from Aaron Cruz. Hello, Breton. What is your usual approach to spotting a film, or let's say, obviously in this case, a TV series? And how does it work with you, with you and Brian? Like how would a typical episode work?
It can be very varied. So on a show that I've worked on a lot, it can go very quickly, because we all are kind of in sync with each other's ideas, and it's with the editor as well, the music editor, and Brian and I, and you just sort of basically at that point you're asking questions of if there might be kind of a misunderstanding of the intent with a temp music. But yeah, usually it's just you have a meeting and talk about talk about the music and where it is in certain scenes. Maybe you want to start. I tend to want to start music later than when it's usually edited in, and so when it comes in, it has more impact. And so you're talking about these ideas and just trying to get a sense of, when you start writing, you're on the same page with everybody and not like misunderstanding something. But it could also be, I was talking with the director on 1923, and you say something like, "Oh, look, I want to try something different here," and they just kind of pre-warn them that this is what I'm going to try that might be different. Like, let me know. I'll send you a clip of it, and if it's not right, we can do something more from the temp. It's basically a chance to have a discussion with everyone involved and talk ideas about the score, really.
And what's interesting, again, I think when you look at it, 1883 is kind of like the story of Moses in a way, because it doesn't seem like anyone survives from that wagon train at all, which makes the show so impactful for me. I thought the ending was just fantastic. I mean, I don't know where the Dutton comes from any of this, because they're all dead. But I mean, it really kind of brings in just musically, just a sense of fate, really, into 1883.
Mm-hmm. Sorry.
Oh no, would you say that really kind of upped the fate and ante in terms of just the impactful drama that you were writing?
Yeah, I think, like, I always feel about, sometimes there's moments in scores where there's this kind of looking back on the whole trajectory of the story, and seeing things from hindsight. And I think maybe that's sort of what you mean, like, with this sort of feeling like there's an inevitability or like a fable-like quality to the story. And sometimes I feel like maybe I mean, I don't know how I could distill it in a decision. Maybe it's the thematic writing, it's the big, swelling emotions that come in at key moments. I know that Taylor was very particular about when we used the Yellowstone theme. He didn't want us to overuse it, and he wanted it only in moments that he felt justified it. And it would be, I think it would have that kind of effect of seeing the picture from a broader spectrum, and that combined with his words and these beautiful monologues that he will put in there. Maybe that's what gives it that quality.
Right. I mean, and then we go back to Yellowstone. I forget how many seasons it lasted, but obviously the last season took a major twist because Kevin Costner did not return. It definitely wasn't a dream in the shower. He was dead. What do you think? Obviously, at one point the show was going to go in one direction had he not suddenly died, or at least his character died. And then suddenly you're scoring a whole different end of the show, which I personally thought was better. I thought it was just, I didn't, show for me went a little red state sidetracking, but it really got itself back together in the last season. I mean, what was that like for you to kind of roll with that punch of, maybe where you thought it was going to go, and then suddenly we're doing an entirely different season?
I mean, it was, I remember getting that scene where, Beth runs back to see what happens, and you kind of see the fallout of all of that. And it was a really long queue. I remember thinking, God, that's a long queue. I really got to think of something good for that. And so, yeah, I think you have all these themes with characters, and then you get to really bring them back in a moment where they're at their most, desperate or climactic in the story. And it's such it's an opportunity that I relish, to be able to kind of hopefully elicit that feeling from the audience as well, because you spend all this time falling in love with the characters, and then they're in pain, they're suffering from grief and from loss. And so, yeah, it's just a wonderful opportunity to write for those kinds of stories.
And then you've got 2 seasons of 1923, and I don't know, but the first season, but the second season was just fantastic. I mean, man, it really became like an epic. You know, you had the whole Ellis Island experience. You had like the perils of Pauline, of her nearly dying in in a blizzard wasteland. And and again, it really, I mean, for me, 1923 is really where it kind of transcended into this kind of mythic Godfather-esque show. I mean, what was it like to do 1923 and to really kind of take that epic jump with the second season?
It's funny you say Godfather. I'd never really thought about that. That's such a good comparison. You said it really epic. It was just that again. I got the script, and you're saying, you know, the script say Africa, and you're like, what? Where are we going with this? And I think, you know, I keep saying, going back to this, like I feel so lucky to be able to work on this stuff, because you get to explore so much with the music and have a lot of fun with it. And so with 1923, it was about kind of trying to give that variation in the locations. And so we had like some African music, African instrumentation in there. And then there's this, you know, oppressive Catholic school that is just so harrowing to score, but feels so important to have pictured on screen and shown and talked about. Yeah, I think epic is absolutely the word, and just the scope of where you're traveling to. And I you know, I wonder if, you know, having set out these like big thematic style and approach within Yellowstone really helps set us up for these other stories where they go very epic, because you can still do that Yellowstone trend of doing the big themes, but it feels like you can really add another level to it that feels appropriate for something that is a big kind of, as you said, Godfather-like epic.
Yeah, and then then we take a completely unexpected detour, which is to the Madison. It's not connected at this point to the Yellowstone, but it's essentially, it's kind of ladies' night. You know, in the Taylor Sheridan, it's definitely a kind of a softer, more meditative show. We're not shooting our brother in this one, but what was it again? But again, it was some of your best scoring, and just in terms of just writing really this beautiful, romantic, you know, solidly orchestral music. You know, obviously you had you know, you had done your kind of chick flick, you know, scores, feature scores, you know, before doing that, and in a way, the Madison kind of goes back to that genre.
Yeah, I came on quite late as well, and so by the time I started it, I was able to watch every episode of the season, and yeah, it's a completely different style that from Taylor. The one thing he did say is he loves 1883. It's one of his favorite scores, and so the reason why he brought me on was because he wanted that kind of, I guess, DNA within the score. And so I guess there's that kind of connection as well, in the sense that, you know, it's thematic writing again. It's, you know, it's something that I love about Taylor is he really likes melody, and it's not always a given in film scoring, especially these days. I think it's kind of out of fashion at the moment with some projects. And so to be able to write something that is thematic is yeah, it's just a gift today.
What was it? Was it a challenge? Again, you are the solo pilot on this one. What was that responsibility like?
It was okay. Like I think because I've worked with Taylor a lot, like I sort of knew. Yeah. So when I got brought on, I did the same thing as I've done with Brian, is I wrote a suite for it just to get a sense of, am I going down the right track with my ideas? Are the themes right? Do they feel like right for the characters, right for the show? And so and also a lot of the people I'm working with, like Chad, the editor, he was working on Yellowstone already. And so I feel like I had like a good shorthand with him about where the music should be. And he gave, you know, they gave me a lot of latitude to kind of do what I think with the score, and a lot of trust as well. And I think that helps in a way, like because, well, it happens because I've worked so much with them and have been able to establish that kind of relationship with them.
Was it a challenge to do a series, again, with so much turbulence and violence, to do a much more poignant series like Madison?
Was it harder? Sorry.
In a way, that you don't
Yeah.
have all this action going on, that it's about.
Oh, I don't know. I wonder if I think I kind of found it easier. I found it easier to tap into that emotion. Let's say, I think like these are his writing is so, I don't know how to say it. So you can feel it very, very much, and you have phenomenal acting from Michelle Pfeiffer, and you're just like, there really wasn't a huge amount I needed to do in some scenes, and actually it was about stepping back and letting Michelle Pfeiffer do her thing, because like the last thing I wanted to do was say to the audience, stop watching her, listen to the music instead. And actually it was about kind of picking my moments of when. And there's another thing with Taylor is like he'll have moments in his shows where the score does shine. He lets it do its thing. And so in a way, I think I think it was a bit easier. I think also because it was something different, really. And I felt fresh with that kind of storytelling, I guess.
Right. And now, what's interesting is that Yellowstone had gone to broadcast television, and had done really well there, but obviously censored down. But then Yellowstone actually has literally a show done for television, which is Marshall's, different showrunner, completely different vibe. It's essentially a cop procedural show. What was that challenge like?
It was difficult because, and this goes on to Dutton Ranch as well, is you're trying to honor Yellowstone and honor these characters that have been, they're in the hearts of all these people that watch it, but then you're also trying to say something with the music that helps the story go into a new direction. And a lot of this was about trying to, it's a very, it's action oriented, so it was trying to have that raw kind of aggression and ruggedness to the score. And then you have those moments where I was saying to Brian, it was like, oh, we know what to do here. This is the Yellowstone vibe. And it's like scenes, for instance, where, they're introducing East Camp, Casey's ranch. And it's that kind of, it's the Yellowstone music. And so it was about, for that show, it was about trying to balance the Yellowstoneness with the Marshallsness, I guess you could say.
Right, and this brings us to God forgive me, probably my favorite show of all of this, which is Dutton Ranch. So completely different in a lot of respects, but pretty much definitely on point. Which brings us to a question from Louis Versellini. Now, when scoring Dutton Ranch and U.S. Marshals, what drives the score more? Geography, Texas versus Montana culture, or just simply the characters?
Yeah, I think it's both. A big thing for Dutton Ranch was the location, and that fed back into the characters as well. Because when we start the show, we're doing that very Yellowstone, Montana, big sweeping score, and then they have this massive storm that completely upends everything, and it's the driving force for the story. And so they go to Texas. And I wanted the score to have this Texas feeling to it, and have inspiration of Tejano, like Latino culture and music, as well as Texas country music in there as inspirations. And it helps for me, that helps to tell the story of the characters are kind of out of, they're out of their comfort zone. They're in like a territory that's not familiar to them, whereas even the music isn't familiar to them. It's not the usual Yellowstone music. And so I feel like that was a situation where both the location and the location kind of informed the music that helped tell the story of the characters as well. And then you get little moments where their themes come back in, and you get to tell their story within the Texas sound palette, I guess.
Yeah, and then Dutton, the characters are, well, Rick is pretty much the same, but Beth is, pretty different. We're used to seeing her as a real Hellcat, but in this, she's kind of come down to earth. Quite, there's no kind of like Beth moments that there are here and there, but not really remotely what you've gotten previously. And also, again, the politics, which for me got a little bit much in parts of Yellowstone. They're not even there in this. It's really about the characters. It's just like a straight up, very surprisingly subtle show for all the drama that is in it. Which is, I think, why I like this just so much. It's part of the same ranch, but it feels very, very different.
Yeah, I think Beth has this vulnerability to her because she's had the rug pulled under her and had so much, I guess, trauma happen to her, not least within Yellowstone, losing her father, but also losing this new ranch that she thought she was going to have a happy life with Rip on. And I think, like, also in losing her father, she's lost a guiding star in there was those scenes in Yellowstone where she would just talk to him and get a kind of compass calibration with him, and she doesn't have that anymore. And yeah, when you're saying with this with Dutton Ranch, when there's those moments where Beth's doing the Beth kind of machinations with Beulah, we bring back in her old theme from some of the earlier Yellowstone seasons, where it's Beth kind of doing Beth's thing, where she's working the relationships and finding out the dirty secrets, I guess.
Yes, those John Wayne Spurs did not.
You're right.
I mean, I got to tell you, probably my favorite piece of music. One of the great, even though it's a horrible moment, but it's one of the best pieces of music in the history of writing for anything, is the whole sequence where they have to wipe out their herd that has gotten foot and mouth disease. And it's just like like there's a great line where Rick says, this is going to haunt you for the rest of your life. And then it's really music that just drives this entire scene. And I can only imagine it was pretty hard to I love animals, which is why I wasn't a big fan of the first season of 1923, but yeah, even CGI animals. But in this, it's just such a devastating, and the music is such a huge part of how heavy hitting that sequence is.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm glad you feel that way, because there's a lot of responsibility when you get a scene like that you don't want to fuck it up, and so I think, like, with that, it was about, there's moments where the score ramps up and then it comes back and goes to silent and then comes back in again but quieter, and I think it was kind of, I don't know, I think the tricky thing was to not make it overly saccharine, and to actually play the tragedy of it all, and the kind of, the unjustness of it, rather than play the I mean, I guess we're sort of doing the sadness as well, but it's just not overly too saccharine, I guess is the word. And I brought on the violinist who did a lot of the 1923 as well. She did Madison as well. I brought her on because I just knew her playing was really going to just sell this absolute horror of what's happening. And we spent a while trying to get that kind of playing and performance from her that the scene required, I think.
Yeah, I mean, because thank God we see maybe one shot or something, but I mean, really, it's the music that has to make you, just like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which had no score, but it's a horrific obviously, they got to do whatever they got to do, but it's really the music that plays what you're not seeing, which is what makes it extra powerful. Yeah,
I think, isn't it John Williams says that the music is doing what the camera can't do, and I think that's definitely, it can be easy to forget what your job is, and it's definitely trying to sell that kind of sell the soul, I guess, of a scene, of a show, of a project, trying to communicate that with people.
Now, in terms of instruments, Dale would love to know, is that a guitar viol in your studio to your right? And in what ways have you used a guitar viol in scoring?
Yeah, that's right there. I don't know if I can point it. Whoop, right there. Yeah, that is a guitar viol. I used it on 1923 actually during the scene when Alex is getting processed. She's arrived at Ellis Island, and she's getting processed by the medical, I guess, doctors and medical team, and it's this really feeling like she feels. Oh, it's just this horrible, like, kind of, I don't know, like, examination and dehumanizing process. And I wanted an instrument that felt familiar but unfamiliar at the same time, and it came really useful to kind of sell the I guess the horribleness of that experience. And I don't know if it was like, being an immigrant myself, I never had to deal with that kind of thing, thankfully, but it was something that kind of resonated with me, to be like a special scene that required something other, something unfamiliar and off-putting.
Yeah, I mean, that scene, that whole sequence is really almost where the show kind of transcends itself. I mean, God, again, as I said, the reason I just love the show, because I was a major league fan of Dallas growing up. Didn't watch Knots Landing, but I watched Dallas. And again, it was essentially it's this really wonderful soap opera of all the kind of chicanery and machinations happening in Texas. But with that sequence, this really becomes, it jumps right outside of, even the term soap opera, because basically she literally essentially goes through a rape in that sequence where, where she's examined, and just, it's all about violation, and her performance is so great. And again, that whole sequence is just like, wow.
Yeah.
And again, the way the music again really helped that sequence is pretty amazing.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, she's such a wonderful character. It's been some time away, and I played her and Spencer's theme on piano, and it just sort of brought back so many memories of her performance and their performance and just everything they go through. It's sort of, I don't know, I think, like, when I write something for a show, it's sort of like you're putting a piece of you in there, and you fall in love with these characters, and now that I've said goodbye to them and it's been some time, I sort of revisit them and have a kind of nostalgia to it all.
Right. All I could say, justice for Jamie. He was done wrong. I think he deserved to go out in a less visceral way, but that's just me. But on that note, one thing I really love about Dutton Ranch is that, basically, and when the villains are kind of black and white. They're evil and they're bad, and let's throw them off the gorge or whatever. But even every single what you could call bad guy in Dutton Ranch, there's like almost a stunning amount of depth to it. Where basically, Beulah, you realize why she had to basically shove fentanyl in cows. And even before Captain Boomerang, gets sent off, there's a great moment where he says, to his daughter, you're like the only good thing, about me. And even then you feel, as much as you hate this guy, you actually kind of like him, because again, that's what really distinguishes Dutton Ranch is the complexity of the bad guys. I mean, were you surprised by that?
And it was interesting because I would get each episode one at a time, and sort of, I could be an audience member as well, and sort of you get this impression of Beulah at the beginning, and then it kind of flips, and it's constantly playing with your expectations of these characters. And I think it's really fascinating, and also for Everett and Beulah, for their story and background to come in and into play as well. It's it creates these moments where you can do a lot with the score and say a lot of that story music wise, and yeah, it's really fun to do.
Yeah, I mean, and again, even the music, while it's really beautiful and orchestral, it's fairly downbeat. Which again, when you listen to Yellowstone, it's actually a fairly downbeat scoring, because again, the characters are pretty vulnerable, in this.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're going through the ringer, right? Like when they do have moments of levity, of happiness, it's very short lived. And so we do have those moments, and but yeah, it's just so much, they go through hell and back.
Yeah, it's like when you and Ed Harris's character show for about half of the episodes, I thought maybe he was Beulah's ex-husband or something like that, and you're going to get a line of dialogue where it reveals that they were married at one point, because you're quite uncertain. And again, he's like the kind of definition. He's like the Sam Elliott of this
Yeah.
one, because he's the strong, silent type, character. I mean, what was it like again having that pairing of Annette Bening and Ned Harris, and how to play them?
I think he like the first scene he comes in, it's well, actually there's one scene, it's not the first scene, but it's one scene he comes in and he just walks into the shot where the horse is Beth is with the horse, and she doesn't want to, she thinks she can euthanize the horse, but doesn't want to in the end. He just walks into the shot, and I'm like, wow, this guy is born and raised in Texas and has lived there and aged by the sun. He just brings absolute authenticity to any character. And yeah, the thing that makes what I think is the thing that makes my job really easy is having incredible actors, because you know which moments that you want to hit, and how much you need to do, and quite honestly, it's not a huge amount. You're just supporting them. You're trying to kind of underline a scene rather than like cross it out with the music, so to speak. And yeah, it's a gift to be able to work with them.
Right. I mean, it's like, I don't know, man. It's like he can save a horse that had literally it was impaled by a pipe, but he can't defeat hoof and mouth disease. What's up with that vet?
Yeah, you're right.
And again, and again, obviously now your big bad, or whom you thought your big bad, is now out of the picture unless they can somehow revive him. Anything is possible. But now the villains essentially appear to be the cartel. What the show thankfully has been re-up for another season, but where do you see the music going?
I don't know. I have no idea. I need to start seeing some cuts and see where it's going to go, because I think that will inspire me to know where to take the show. And we kind of introduced a thematic idea for him in the last episode. So I think for me, I'm sure we're going to do more of his character. So I would love to explore that thematic idea and flesh it out a bit more and have it say more.
How much was Taylor involved? Obviously in these shows there have different showrunners, different writing team, and I think it really brings something fresh. But I mean, is Taylor involved at all? Is the exec producer in the music, or does he watch the episodes to make sure everything is cool before sending it off? Or
yeah, so I don't know about the higher up sort of relationship, but with us, we sent some stuff to him to make sure that it felt right for him as well, and he was saying that he felt the music should be orchestral again and thematic, like we've always been, like we had established with Yellowstone. And so yeah, it was definitely getting his permission and making sure that he was happy with where it was going.
Yeah, no, for sure. Obviously you're not from here.
Yeah. How could you tell?
But when you look at it, there are very few TV shows on that are America that kind of symbolize America. You have like a whole now commercialization industry built around, Yellowstone booze or boots or, what is essentially, someone who isn't from here, but yet writing very American music and, is watched by a ton of Americans, just people. These shows are essentially about America. What is that like?
It's surreal. It's really surreal. And because it didn't start off that way, the audience really grew. And I think for me, I always think about one of my favorite films is Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, which is a very British spy. It's a John le Carré novel. It's all about spying. It's about British culture as well, and class system and interpersonal relationships within British society. And it's directed by a Swedish director. And I think maybe there's something to be said that you have someone from outside a culture to come in to also help tell that culture as well. I think maybe cultures and not just like what we think of our culture, but it's also what other people think of a culture, and their kind of I feel like their kind of perception of it helps to round it off as well, maybe.
I mean, again, people, I think for the most part, America's perception of the West comes from the movies, television shows. Mm-hmm. How do you think musically, what you and Brian have done have like called back the spirits of, the great old Westerns while capturing the Southwestern spirit, how you've fed into that mythology with these shows?
God, I don't know. I mean, I feel like I'm not the right person to ask about this. Like, it's so, I don't know. All I want to do is write good music that feels appropriate for the shows and tells the story how Taylor wants to tell the story. And anything grander and more zeitgeisty or something that's more a grander narrative to score that's not for me to say. Like, all I want to do is do a good job and hopefully people dig the music and it works for the show.
What's up ahead for you?
I am doing Madison season 2, and Marshall's is starting back up again. There's another show I'm doing, but I can't really talk about it, unfortunately. But it's a really great show, and I'm able to do a very different sound to anything I've done before. So I'm really excited for that, and just waiting for Dutton Ranch as well. So it's gonna be a busy year.
What would you love to see spun off into its own?
Oh my word! You know what? I want Everett. Let's do a show of Everett. I think he's amazing. Ed Harris is Everett, just working as a vet, saving animals. Let's do that.
I want to see Everett in the Nom.
yeah, that's it. Yeah, because he wears a Navy cap, right? So Navy Everett. Yeah.
And it looks like we're finally going to get the end to the Fast and the Furious saga, which you've helped Brian out on, obviously. Which I think was like 5 years ago. We saw a dam fall down on Vin Diesel. What's it going to be like for you to, I imagine, get back into that world after so long?
I'm not doing that. So that's Brian's world. Like that was me helping him out. Like when goes back to what we were saying when I was assistant, like just helping out, being all hands on deck. I think my hands are going to be really full with all these spin-offs and dealing with that. So I hats off to them. That sort of score is intense to write and takes a lot of energy. Yeah.
Oh, we've got one more question from you for Louis Versellini. Breton, if you could play any character in the Yellowstone saga, which would it be and why?
Oh my God. Okay. Any character. I'd probably Everett, man. I just think he's so cool, and to have that kind of coolness and ruggedness, I think it's amazing, and to be able to be helping animals, I think it's a noble cause. So, Everett.
Indeed, I love Everett. Breton, I want to thank you so much for joining us on Film Music Live. Watch Dutton Ranch, the Madison, and Marshalls, and basically anything Yellowstone on Paramount Plus, with Breton's scores available on Sony Music and Milan Records. Thanks to Jana Davidoff and Alex Beck-Weinstein at Rhapsody PR, Jamie Bertel at Sony Music, our show producer Dale Turner, and graphic designer Mark Banning. And I'll be seeing you on the next Film Music Live.